For nearly 2 years, Clara had poured her life into the vibrant heart of the city, leaving behind the quiet, sprawling fields of her childhood in Harmony Springs. Like so many others, she'd come seeking more than just a change of scenery. She'd come chasing a brighter horizon, a chance to truly make a difference. Clara was no wide-eyed dreamer. She knew that building a better future meant dedication and grit, and she embraced the long hours and demanding tasks without complaint. She'd quickly secured a position as a sales manager at a bustling tech firm downtown, the commissions generous enough to offer a glimmer of hope. Her small, cosy apartment, with its sun-drenched living room and a view of the city park, was a modest haven, just what she needed for this demanding season of life. Yet, despite her substantial earnings, Clara rarely saw the money herself. Almost every dollar found its way back to Harmony Springs, a lifeline for the one person who needed it most, her ailing mother. It was her mother's sudden illness that had propelled Clara to the city in the first place. After a severe stroke, her mother required a host of specialized medications and therapies, far beyond what their small-town clinic could provide. The complimentary subscriptions were merely a drop in the ocean of what was truly needed. What could Clara, a humble administrative assistant, have offered then? Nothing. But from the city she could send aid, real tangible help. Her heart ached with worry for her mother, yet a quiet reassurance settled within her, knowing that her mother wasn't truly alone. Her younger sister Daisy, 5 years Clara's junior, was there. Growing up, Daisy had always been their mother's darling, the one who could do no wrong. Daisy's mischievous antics were often met with a gentle smile, while Clara, the elder, bore the weight of responsibility, often held accountable for Daisy's missteps. "You didn't watch her closely enough. You didn't explain it properly. You didn't help her," her mother used to say. In her youth, the perceived favoritism stung, but with age, Clara had come to accept it. Their mother's love, though seemingly uneven, was still love, and after all she was family. It was their mother, surprisingly, who had been Clara's staunchest advocate when she left for the state university, supporting her through 5 years of tuition and living expenses. Daisy, on the other hand, had remained in Harmony Springs after high school. Their mother had always explained it away, saying Daisy simply wasn't cut out for city life. Perhaps there was some truth to that, but Daisy's academic struggles, a constant dance between D's and C's, also played a part. Again, their mother had an explanation. The teachers were simply inadequate. Clara couldn't help but recall that those same inadequate teachers had guided her to a near-perfect academic record, with only a single B in gym class. All of that was in the past now. After high school, Daisy had drifted through various odd jobs, the local post office, the general store, and for a while Clara had even pulled some strings to get her a position at her work. But Daisy never settled. Then their mother fell ill. She had been working at a local farm when she collapsed unexpectedly, right there amidst the gentle lowing of the cows. The quick thinking of her fellow workers saved her, rushing her to safety and calling for an ambulance. If only they'd been in a bustling city, perhaps the outcome would have been different. Instead, their mother was first transported to the regional hospital, then on a bumpy 2-hour journey to a specialised stroke centre in a neighbouring county. The ambulance had even broken down twice along the way, precious minutes slipping away. Time was of the essence, the specialists at the stroke centre had gently explained to Clara. After the mandatory stay, they released her mother, a fragile shadow of her former self, unable to move or speak. Yet there was a flicker of hope. Intensive therapy and costly medications, they said, offered a chance for recovery. It was this possibility, after much soul-searching, that had propelled Clara to the city to earn the money that might bring her mother back. Clara had trusted Daisy to oversee their mother care. Daisy had agreed, but barely a week passed before her sister's frantic call shattered Clara's peace. "I can't do it anymore. I'm exhausted," Daisy had wailed into the phone. "Come back and take care of her yourself." Clara reminded her sister of their agreement. Clara would earn the money and Daisy would provide the loving care, all to help their dear mother heal. But Daisy's pleas turned to desperate sobs as she spoke of the overwhelming task of turning, washing and feeding their mother. For a moment, Clara considered abandoning everything and rushing back to Harmony Springs. But then she remembered the doctor's words, the hope they'd offered. If she left the city, how would she ever afford the specialised care her mother needed? With a heavy heart, she called her previous workplace, relying on old connections, then reached out to the county's social services department to arrange for a home healthcare aide. Finding someone was a relief, even if it meant paying above and beyond what was usually covered. It was a small price for her mother's well-being. Clara would work 25 hours a day if it meant her mother would recover. She was the unfavoured daughter, perhaps, but her gratitude and unwavering love ran deeper than any perceived slight. Now, almost 2 years later, Clara continued to support her family from afar. Daisy called regularly, providing detailed updates on medications purchased and supplies needed. Clara sent money for everything: special adult protective underwear, a pressure-relieving mattress, a hospital-grade bed, even the aide's salary, and countless other necessities. The calls with Daisy were a constant thread, her sister's confident voice outlining every expense and providing cheerful reports on their mother's health condition. But this last bit was the hardest for Clara to hear. Despite all the effort and expense, her mother hadn't shown any significant improvement. Clara had begun researching rehabilitation centres, even though the costs were staggering. She took on extra projects at work, meticulously saving every penny. Time was of the essence. Every day that passed felt like a step further away from her mother's potential recovery. Daisy's calls had grown more frequent. Her voice hushed with urgency as she described increasingly expensive medications their mother supposedly needed. Clara, trusting her sister implicitly, would immediately transfer the requested funds upon receiving a photo of the prescription. She didn't question, didn't call the local clinic, didn't reach out to anyone else in Harmony Springs about her mother's health. There simply wasn't time or energy to hear a rehash of what Daisy had already conveyed. Then the world tilted on its axis. A call from Mrs. Henderson, their mother's kind-hearted neighbour, delivered a crushing blow. "Clara, dear," Mrs. Henderson's voice was gentle, yet laced with an undeniable tremor. "I know you're terribly busy in the bustling city, but surely you could have made it for the memorial service?" Clara's blood ran cold. "Memorial service? What are you talking about?" she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. "Oh, Clara," Mrs. Henderson sighed, a dry sorrow in her tone. "Your sweet mother, Mary, was laid to rest over a week ago, 9 days to be exact." "Laid to rest?" Clara's cry echoed in the small break room. "Why wasn't I told? Why did no one inform me?" "Oh, Daisy, she tried calling you. Mrs. Henderson explained, her voice softening. "Said you were far too busy, so we all pitched in to help send your mother on her way." "She called me 3 days ago," Clara gasped, the words tumbling out, "and told me to buy a new pressure sore bandage." "Bandage?" Mrs. Henderson's turn to gasp. "Mary won't be needing any cream, so that means—" "Yes, Mrs. Henderson," Clara choked out, the bitter truth settling in her stomach like a stone. "Daisy didn't tell me anything about Mum." Clara ended the call abruptly, her fingers trembling as she dialed Daisy's number. Only the hollow, unending rings answered her. With a frustrated sigh, she shoved her phone into her purse and hurried towards the office. Mrs. Henderson's call had caught her on the subway, and now, amidst the jostling crowd, her mind raced, trying to grasp the enormity of what she had just heard. She had to go home immediately. She needed to confront Daisy to understand this unthinkable betrayal. And she needed to visit her mother's grave to finally say goodbye. The thought that she hadn't been there for her mother's final farewell squeezed her heart, bringing tears stinging to her eyes. The moment she stepped into the bustling office, Clara marched straight to her boss's door. "Mr. Thompson, I need to take some time off, immediately, even if it's unpaid leave," she announced, her voice strained. Mr. Thompson, a man known for his sharp suits and even sharper attitude to people, raised an eyebrow, a faint smirk playing on his lips. "Time off? Clara, everyone wants time off, but we have our quarterly reports due." "I understand, but these are personal circumstances." Clara's voice wavered, but she pushed on. "My mother passed away, and I couldn't even be there for her funeral." "My condolences," Mr. Thompson replied, his tone clipped and devoid of true warmth. "But, as I understand it, the services have already taken place. Complete your report, and then you can take a couple of weeks." "I can't wait that long, Mr. Thompson. Please understand, I need to go there now. There's so much I need to figure out." "I've made myself clear, Clara," he stated, turning back to his computer. "Mr. Thompson, I've worked tirelessly for you for 2 years, through weekends, through holidays. I just need a week." "Clara, you are not listening." His voice hardened. "We have a report to finalize. Get back to your desk." "No," Clara retorted, a fierce determination rising within her. "I'm demanding leave, or I'll leave anyway." "Demanding?" Mr. Thompson chuckled, a patronizing sound. "Miss Reed, aren't you being a bit presumptuous? Who do you think you are, making demands here?" "I'm a person, not a machine, and I have personal emergencies too," Clara blurted out, her voice echoing in the quiet office. She spun on her heel and stormed out of his office. Her boss's furious shouts of "You're fired!" followed her, and curious stares from her colleagues trailed her as she practically ran for the exit. On her hurried escape, Clara realised she was a week overdue on her rent. As if on cue, her landlady's call came through, demanding immediate payment. Clara tried to explain, but the landlady was unmoved. "Fine, to hell with you all!" Clara yelled into the phone, her voice thick with frustration. "If your things aren't out of that apartment by tonight, I'm throwing them on the curb," the landlady shrieked back. Before Clara could even put her phone away, a call came from HR, informing her that her final paycheck would be processed within the day. Clara knew then her life in this city came to an abrupt, unexpected end. Yet strangely, the loss of her job and apartment didn't sting as much as the agonizing thoughts of her mother, and more disturbingly, her sister. Daisy still wasn't answering her calls, despite Clara's relentless attempts. Bursting into her tiny apartment, Clara grabbed her few treasured belongings, handed the spare key to her bewildered neighbour, and raced towards the bustling bus station. She arrived just 10 minutes before departure, securing the very last ticket on the overnight express. For nearly 24 hours, cooped up in a bus, she did little to calm her racing mind. All she could think about was what had truly happened back in her hometown and why Daisy remained so stubbornly silent. Finally, the bus wheezed to a halt at the small familiar station. Almost home. 15 minutes later, after flagging down a taxi driven by a gruff but friendly local. It was mid-morning, a beautiful, clear June day, the kind of day that usually filled her with a sense of peace. Most of the townspeople were busy in their yards, tending to their burgeoning gardens. No one paid much attention to the cab that pulled up to the property of the late Mary Reed. But as Clara stepped out of the car, she froze, her breath catching in her throat at the sight before her. Her mother's beloved homestead looked as if an explosion had ripped through it. The picket fence was gone, the fragrant bushes uprooted, and the colossal oak tree in the front yard, a landmark of her childhood, lay toppled and sawed into locks. A monstrous bulldozer roared by the house, its powerful blade tearing down the last vestiges of the structure. In truth, the house itself was no more. No roof, no walls, just the crumbling outline of the old foundation. Snapping out of her shock, Clara sprinted towards the bulldozer. "Stop!" she shrieked, her voice hoarse with fury. "What are you doing? Who gave you permission?" The burly bulldozer operator, a stranger, didn't hear the enraged young woman. He only noticed her when she was almost upon him, and he swore under his breath. The last thing he needed was to accidentally hit some crazed woman. "What are you doing here?" he yelled over the din of the machinery. "Can't you see we're working? Get out of here, now!" "Get out?" Clara gasped, indignation choking her. "Who gave you the right to destroy everything here? This is my mother's house." "I don't know what mother you're talking about," the man grunted, slamming the cabin door shut and grabbing the levers. "Some guy hired me. He's the owner of this plot." The bulldozer roared to life with renewed force. Deafened by the engine's thunder, but even more so by the worker's words, Clara stood rooted to the spot. What owner? What is happening here? Just then, she saw someone waving frantically from the neighbouring property. It was Mrs. Henderson, the same kind woman who had called her just days ago. Clara stumbled forward, her legs like shaky saplings, barely holding her upright. "Mrs. Henderson, what is happening?" she choked out, fighting to keep the tremor from her voice. Her nerves, stretched taut, felt ready to snap. It seemed she was on the verge of unravelling completely. Her mother's house. She'd raced back to this place, her last anchor, only to find it a pile of splintered dreams. And, as it turned out, no longer even hers. "Clara, dear, Daisy sold the house," Mrs. Henderson replied, her gaze a blend of pity and morbid curiosity. "Oh, goodness, you look faint, my sweet girl. Come inside. Sit down, rest a bit, and we'll talk about everything." Clara nodded, a numb, obedient movement. She stepped carefully over a jagged shard of what used to be her mother's fence, and found herself on Mrs. Henderson's perfectly manicured lawn. The older woman wrapped a comforting arm around her shoulders and gently guided her into the cosy sun-drenched cottage. There, with the warmth of herbal tea seeping into her chilled hands, Clara slowly began to calm, though the unsettling revelations kept coming. As Mrs. Henderson spoke, a chilling report of Daisy's deception emerged. Daisy, it seemed, had spun a convincing tale for everyone in Harmony Springs. Clara had simply abandoned their helpless mother, leaving all the burdens to her. Most had believed her, even Dr. Myers, who, moved by Daisy's supposed plight, had successfully advocated for the home healthcare aide salary to be fully covered by county social services. But there wasn't bought a new hospital bed, no specialised pressure-relieving mattress for her mother. The only medications Mary had received were those paltry few provided free of charge by the local clinic. Clara listened, her hands clutching her head as if to hold her shattering thoughts together. How could her own sister, her flesh and blood, have orchestrated such a cruel deception? Where had all the money gone? The substantial sums Clara had sent faithfully, sometimes weekly, sometimes every few days, to Daisy. And, most agonizingly, why hadn't a single soul in the village reached out to her? Not even Dr. Myers, under whose guidance she had once proudly served. He should have known Clara's character, known she could never abandon her mother. "Oh, Daisy was terribly convincing, dear," Mrs. Henderson sighed, shaking her head slowly. "Everyone believed her. Everyone believed Daisy, it seemed, but not Clara. I still can't quite believe you were helping them all this time," Mrs. Henderson confessed, her eyes wide with a dawning horror. "Daisy often had to buy groceries on credit at the market. She ran to my door countless times, begging to borrow a few dollars until your mother's pension came through." "How could she?" Clara cried out, throwing her hands up in utter despair, the teacup clattering on its saucer. Then a sudden desperate thought pierced through her anguish. She pulled out her phone, opened her banking app, and showed Mrs. Henderson the long list of financial transactions spanning the last several months. There it was, stark and undeniable, the precise dates and generous amounts Clara had transferred to Daisy. Mrs. Henderson's jaw dropped, her eyes widening in disbelief. She simply couldn't fathom that her young neighbour, who had appeared so vulnerable and overwhelmed, had been spinning such an elaborate web of lies. "My word, she looked like such a poor, suffering lamb," Mrs. Henderson murmured, shaking her head. "Everyone felt such pity for her. Even Anna, the sweet aide who worked with Mary, did so much extra, going above and beyond. She'd come in on weekends and even rushed over late at night sometimes. She truly worried for Mary and Daisy. The shameless girl! How much money, dear, did she end up taking from you?" "So much," Clara sighed, a hollow ache settling deep in her chest. "But there's no point in counting it now." "No point?" Mrs. Henderson exclaimed, her gentle nature momentarily overtaken by a surge of indignation. "Demand it back! Take her to court!" "It's all just mud now. I don't want that kind of fight," Clara replied, shaking her head, the exhaustion weighing heavily on her. "Mrs. Henderson, what I'm truly wondering is this. How did Daisy manage to sell Mum's house? There are specific legal steps. And she wasn't the only heir. It feels wrong to even ask, but I have to know." "There's nothing wrong with asking, dear. You're absolutely right to question it," Mrs. Henderson affirmed, her hand resting gently on Clara's arm. "It seems Daisy, despite appearing so simple, was cunning in her own way. She brought a notary to Mary's bedside about 6 months ago, Your mother had a brief period of lucidity then, could even move her hand a little. Daisy was quite proud of it at the time. That's when she had a deed of gift prepared, transferring the house completely into her own name, and Mary signed everything." "How could Mum have done that?" Clara whispered, a fresh wave of grief and betrayal washing over her. "Daisy must have constantly whispered in her ear that you'd abandoned them, dear," Mrs. Henderson theorised, her eyes downcast. "So Mary, confused and vulnerable, signed everything over to the one who was always right there by her side, and honestly, Mary was a wonderful woman. She always seemed to favour Daisy a little more," Mrs. Henderson added, her voice dropping. "Everyone in the village knew it, perhaps because Daisy was so much like your late father." Clara could only sigh heavily in response. Yes, in a small town like Harmony Springs, secrets rarely stayed buried. Daisy truly was the spitting image of their father, who had tragically perished in a farming accident when their mother was still pregnant with Daisy. It seemed that lifelong favouritism, born perhaps from a desire to give her youngest child enough love for two, had somehow eclipsed Clara in their mother's heart. Mrs. Henderson continued her sombre narrative. 2 weeks before her passing, Mary had been moved to the small county hospital. She needed continuous medical support, but it seemed the doctors had given Daisy the grim news. Her mother's condition was terminal. That's when Daisy had sprung into frantic action. She placed an advertisement for the house in the local newspaper and online. Soon after, a buyer appeared, some man from the city. Daisy sold the house a mere 2 days before their mother's death. From the hospital morgue, Mary's casket was taken directly to the cemetery. There was no traditional stop at her beloved homestead, not even a brief moment for neighbours to pay their respects. The house, after all, now belonged to someone else. And Daisy, no one in the village knew where she had gone, only that she was living somewhere in the district capital. Even her mother's burial had fallen to the village council. Daisy had wept, claiming she had no money, that the funds from the house sale were somehow stuck in the bank. "There were just so many complications," Mrs. Henderson explained, her voice tinged with lingering exasperation. "Everyone believed her, and honestly, dear, with everything going on, no one had the time to go poking around." Beyond the formalities handled by the village council, the community had rallied, a testament to their deep-rooted compassion. Neighbours organised a potluck, shared memories and comforted one another. That was how Mary was finally laid to rest, and Daisy, oh, Daisy had wept copious tears at the graveside, a performance worthy of an Academy Award. But the moment the last shovel of earth fell, she vanished, not even staying for the quiet gathering afterward. Since then, not a whisper, not a trace of her. It was then, seeing Daisy's utter disregard, that Mrs. Henderson had finally decided to call Clara. "You were right to call," Clara sighed, a deep, weary sound. "You should have called sooner." But regrets were a heavy cloak she couldn't afford to wear now. Her focus had to be on what came next. "Find Daisy, then head back to the city," Mrs. Henderson advised, her voice practical. "What else can you do here?" "I can't go back to the city," Clara confessed, her voice thick with emotion. "My life there, it's over." She recounted the abrupt ending of her career there. "Oh, you poor dear," Mrs. Henderson gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "So Daisy stripped you bare, left you with nothing, not even a roof over your head." She paused, her eyes clouding with thought, then added, "Clara, you can stay with me for a while until you figure things out." "Thank you, Mrs. Henderson." Clara tried to smile, but her lips trembled. "I was hoping I wouldn't have to ask, but I truly need that kindness." A new resolve flickered in her eyes. But first I need to go to the cemetery." "Yes, darling, of course." Mrs. Henderson bustled with concern. "Your mother is laid to rest beside your father. Let me take you." "Thank you, but no," Clara gently refused. "I'll find it. I need to be alone for a while." Mrs. Henderson nodded, understanding lighting her kind eyes. Clara stepped out into the crisp afternoon air, pointedly avoiding the jarring sight of the bulldozer still roaring in the distance, levelling what used to be her mother's home. A familiar ache squeezed her heart. She remembered the house, the vibrant garden, the rows of vegetables her mother had tended with such care. Oh, how good it was there! Simple, yes, but filled with warmth and comfort, every corner infused with love. And now, nothing. Clara walked through the village, lost in her thoughts, oblivious to the murmurs and disapproving glances from the townsfolk, who saw only the prodigal daughter, finally returned. No one yet knew the truth, the depth of the deception. Along the quiet lanes, she dialed Daisy's number repeatedly, each attempt met with the same mocking, elongated ring. And then, as she walked past the last houses, nearing the solitude of the cemetery, Daisy's voice, shockingly carefree and cheerful, answered. "Well, hello there, little sister," Daisy chirped, her tone utterly devoid of concern. "Hello," Clara replied, her voice flat, devoid of emotion. "Where are you? And why didn't you tell me about Mum?" "Oh, I got so swamped," Daisy said, a dismissive wave in her voice. "And besides, I thought, why would you want to rush all the way to our little backwater? You wouldn't have made it in time for the funeral anyway." "So, you decided everything for me?" Clara's anger simmered, threatening to boil over. "And Mum's house. You decided to take that for yourself too?" The words tumbled out, sharp and accusatory. "And the money I sent for Mum, where is it? Why am I hearing from the neighbours that Mum didn't even have the most basic necessities?" "Oh, those neighbours will spread all sorts of nasty gossip," Daisy retorted, her voice suddenly sharp, a defensive edge creeping in. "Everything went to Mum, I swear." "Daisy, you're lying. The aid's salary? For one. It turns out she was laid to rest by social services all along." "So how was I supposed to live?" Daisy shrieked, her voice rising in pitch. You abandoned a sick mother, and I had to watch over her day and night. That was my compensation. You abandoned Mum, and now you're demanding something." "I abandoned her? Daisy, have some decency. I denied myself everything, sent every spare penny, hoping Mum was getting good medication, that she lacked nothing. And you were taking advantage of her. You stole from me, and then you sold her house." "And you prove it," Daisy scoffed, a chilling coldness in her voice. "You sent the money yourself without specifying what it was for. And the house? Mum herself decided. She gave it to me because I didn't abandon her, unlike you." With that, Daisy hung up. Clara couldn't reach her again. Her sister had no doubt blocked her number. Tears of raw hurt welled in her eyes, stinging and hot. At the cemetery, Clara finally let the sobs rack her body. She fell to her knees before the fresh mound of earth, the grief overwhelming her, burning away the anger. How could this be? How could her own sister be so cruel, so deceitful? She cried, her voice echoing in the quiet stillness, begging her mother's forgiveness. For what? For not being there in her final moments. And then, through her tears, she whispered, "Mama, I hope you're up in heaven now. I hope you see everything and you know." She adjusted the wilting flowers on the grave, lost in her sorrow. She didn't know how long she knelt there, until a gentle male voice startled her. "Miss, are you all right?" She turned, wiping her eyes. A young man, tall and poised, in an expensive suit, stood nearby. Clara shook her head. "Yes, thank you, I'm fine." "Someone recently passed away here, I presume?" he guessed, looking at the grave. "My mother?" "My condolences. But you know, you've been here for a while. I arrived and you were sitting here. I'm leaving and you're still here. The sun's setting soon. It's getting cold. You'll catch a chill." "Yes, you're right," Clara murmured, rising slowly. "Are you heading back to the village?" he asked, a kind smile gracing his lips. "I can give you a ride. I have my car." "Oh, it's only a 10-minute walk." "Well, it's quicker by car," he chuckled. "My name's Andrew, by the way." "You're not from around here, are you?" Clara guessed. "I will be soon," Andrew replied, a wry grin. "Just moved here from the city. I was in the district centre on business earlier and decided to stop by the cemetery. My ancestors are buried here somewhere, but I couldn't find the plot. The markers must have faded over the years." He paused, a thoughtful look on his face. "My parents and I lived in the city my whole life, but my grandfather was from these parts, and it's all gone now," Andrew said, a touch of sadness in his smile. "No trace of the house. But I grew tired of the city life, decided to return to my ancestral home." As they chatted, they walked to his sleek blue car and drove towards the village. "Where can I drop you?" Andrew asked. "Main Street," Clara replied, then hesitated, feeling a sudden shyness. "You can just stop here. I can walk the rest of the way." "I'm heading there too. We'll ride together," he smiled, a comfortable warmth in his tone. "I was going to check on the progress of my construction." "Construction," Clara echoed, and then a chilling realization struck her. "Wait, you bought my mother's house and tore it down?" she asked, her voice laced with sudden fury. "Main Street, number 42. "I don't understand," Andrew said, a flicker of genuine surprise on his face. "Yes, I bought the house and the lot at that address. Everything was perfectly legal. I can do what I wish with my property now. What's your complaint?" "No complaint," Clara snapped, her voice trembling with barely contained fury. "Just stop the car." Andrew shrugged, a faint crease of confusion on his brow, but complied, pulling the sleek vehicle to the side of the road. Clara strode the rest of the way to Mrs. Henderson's house, her mind churning with a mix of indignation and a painful sense of injustice toward this new acquaintance. Intellectually, she knew Andrew was within his rights, but it still stung, a raw, aching wound, to see the man who had ordered the destruction of the home so precious to her heart. As Clara approached Mrs. Henderson's cottage, Andrew's car was already parked near what used to be her mother's yard. Andrew himself was issuing commands to a small crew of workers. Clara sighed, a heavy, defeated sound, and stepped onto Mrs. Henderson's inviting porch. Inside, Mr. Myers was waiting, his kind face etched with concern. He immediately pulled Clara into a warm fatherly embrace, murmuring apologies for ever having doubted her. Mrs. Henderson, a true village matriarch, had wasted no time spreading the truth of Daisy's cruel deceit to everyone she could reach. "I would never have believed it," Mr. Myers sighed, shaking his head. "She seemed like such a simple, innocent girl. Oh, Daisy." "And I wouldn't have believed it either, but here we are," Clara said, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. "Thanks to my sister, I'm essentially homeless now, and without a penny to my name." "Goodness, what a situation," Mr. Myers murmured sympathetically, clearing his throat. "Perhaps you could file a lawsuit against her. I know a good lawyer in the district." "I won't sue her. Let it be her conscience," Clara said, shaking her head, a weary resignation settling over her. Then her eyes met the man's, a flicker of hope in their depths. "Mr. Myers, perhaps could you help me find work? Is there any chance of getting my old position back?" "Clara, my dear, I would in a heartbeat, but your old position is filled," Mr. Myers explained, spreading his hands apologetically. He paused, lost in thought for a moment, then his face brightened. "But what if I put in a good word for you at the county administration office? They're looking for someone in the economic development department." "But where would I live in the county seat? I certainly don't have money for rent right now," Clara worried aloud. "They might offer official housing as a newcomer," Mr. Myers replied, a hopeful smile. "All right, I'll go to the administration office tomorrow and speak with the county executive myself." "Thank you, Mr. Myers," Clara said, a genuine smile finally touching her lips. "Yes, I agree. If it works out, I'll be endlessly grateful." "Nonsense," the man waved his hand dismissively. "Good people deserve a hand up." A few days later, Clara had indeed moved to the county seat. She was given both a comfortable apartment and a promising new job. Slowly, steadily, her life began to mend. The sharp edges of pain began to dull, and she tried not to think of Daisy, as if her sister had simply ceased to exist. Yet she found herself encountering Andrew quite often. He frequented the county administration office several times a week, visiting the planning department or seeking an audience with the executive. Clara learned that Andrew planned to develop a boutique resort and nature preserve in Harmony Springs, and was seeking various permits and grants for the project. Although he had done nothing directly to her, his presence initially grated on her nerves. Clara couldn't help but see Andrew as an arrogant opportunist, always looking to gain an extra penny. But soon her perception began to shift. One afternoon, Andrew walked into Clara's office, an enormous bouquet of creamy white roses in his hands. "Clara, hello," he said softly, a hesitant note in his voice. "I came to apologise." "For what?" Clara asked, her voice deliberately cool, her eyes still fixed on her reports. "The locals, they told me everything," he admitted, his gaze earnest. "I understand now how incredibly painful it must have been for you to see what you saw at your late mother's property. Believe me, I had no idea the situation was so complicated. Please forgive me for the unintentional pain I caused you." You had nothing to do with it," Clara replied, her voice softening, the pretense of the strict, unapproachable official falling away. "And please, forgive me too. I snapped at you for no reason." "Well, it seems we've made our peace then," Andrew said, a warm smile spreading across his face as he extended the roses. "Clara, I heard about a wonderful little cafe downtown. I'd like to invite you there. Could I meet you after work?" He paused, meeting her gaze. "We could just sit, talk, get to know each other." Clara looked at Andrew thoughtfully. He wasn't a bad person at all. Why had she bristled at the sight like a startled cat? She accepted his invitation, and that evening they found themselves sharing stories over steaming mugs of coffee. Several more such meetings followed, each one deepening their connection. And then, slowly, beautifully, they realised they were meant for each other. They dated for just over a year. Clara remained in the county seat, and Andrew also rented an apartment there, constantly overseeing the resort's construction in the village. And when the first phase of the resort, including their own charming cottage, was complete, he proposed to Clara, inviting her into their beautiful new home as its rightful mistress. And so Clara found herself back in her beloved Harmony Springs, on the very homestead she had known since childhood. Now a beautiful new cottage, part of a promising new venture, stood on the lot, the land meticulously landscaped. Her heart swelled with joy. She was home, truly home, and she knew with a certainty that settled deep in her soul that she would never leave her cherished roots again. 2 years had graced Clara and Andrew's lives with a quiet rhythm of joy. Clara had gracefully stepped away from the bustling county office, her heart now fully devoted to their beautiful home and to Andrew's ambitious dream, the boutique resort and nature preserve. It was a grand undertaking, nurturing the land her mother had once cherished, and Andrew poured his soul into it, envisioning a place that would soon be the pride of their beloved county, perhaps even the entire region. Clara and Andrew were simply radiant with happiness. Their family was growing. A precious baby boy was due to arrive in just 4 months, filling their days with eager anticipation and tender preparations. Then, one crisp autumn evening, a hesitant knock echoed through their peaceful home. Clara was just setting the dinner table, the comforting scent of a hearty meal filling the air, while Andrew, having returned from his day in the preserve, was unwinding in the living room. "Clara, love, I'll get it," he called out, his voice warm and easy, as he headed to the entryway. Standing there was a young woman he didn't quite place, a small, weary-looking girl of about 2, clinging to her leg. "Can I help you?" Andrew asked, a flicker of recognition nagging at him. Before he could puzzle it out, Clara appeared from the kitchen, her eyes widening in disbelief. "Daisy?" Andrew's heart sank as he understood. This was that sister, the one who had woven such a tangled web of deceit around his dearest Clara. He had seen her briefly during the property sale and in the faded photograph Clara kept. "Sister, will you let me in?" Daisy's voice was thin and needy, laced with a plea that tugged at Clara's heartstrings. "I came back to our hometown. Somebody told me you were living here. This is Lily." "Well, come in," Clara managed, a mix of confusion and weary resignation in her tone. She glanced at Andrew, offering a slight, almost imperceptible shrug. "What can I do? She's family, after all." Dinner that evening was a quiet affair, heavy with unspoken questions. Little Lily, sweet and exhausted, was already asleep on the living room sofa, too worn out even to eat. After the meal, a difficult, hushed conversation unfolded between Daisy and Clara. Daisy, tears welling in her eyes, poured out a torrent of apologies, painting a tragic picture of her own undoing. After selling their mother's home, she had gambled everything on a new life down south. She had rented a grand house and, for a time, lived a life of frivolous indulgence, blissfully spending the money Clara had painstakingly sent for their mother's care. She'd met a charming man, a seemingly respectable gentleman, and dreamed of building a life with him. But this man, as it turned out, was nothing but a cruel illusion, a con artist. He had systematically drained every penny from Daisy, then vanished without a trace, leaving her utterly alone and significantly pregnant. Daisy explained that when Lily was born, she'd wanted to leave the baby at the hospital, but simply couldn't. Clara, however, suspected the truth ran deeper, that Daisy had kept Lily primarily for the sake of the government support offered to single mothers. For 2 long, difficult years, Daisy and Lily had struggled in the South, barely getting by. Finally, despair driving her, Daisy had decided to return to her roots. As she haltingly admitted, she'd seen Clara's life on social media and realised her sister was living back in Harmony Springs. "I felt so ashamed," Daisy whispered, her eyes cast down. I wanted to make amends." Clara simply nodded, a flicker of guarded scepticism in her gaze, and gently asked what Daisy envisioned for her future. "Oh, I'll just rent some tiny place here and manage," Daisy replied, her voice lacking any real conviction. Clara's brow furrowed. Of course there were empty, even abandoned houses in the village, but she knew with a mother's intuition that Daisy was primarily hoping for her help, despite the profound betrayal. Still, Clara's kind heart wouldn't allow her to turn Daisy and little Lily out into the cold night. She offered them refuge, just for one night. "We'll figure things out in the morning," she told Daisy, her voice gentle but firm. Andrew, though clearly displeased by this sudden turn of events, supported his wife's compassionate decision. They would face it together in the morning. But morning brought a new shock. Daisy was gone. Lily was sleeping peacefully on the living room sofa, her small face serene. Beside her lay a neatly folded birth certificate and a hastily scribbled note. "Take care of her." "Some sister you have," Andrew muttered, shaking his head, a mixture of anger and disbelief in his voice. "Heaven forbid anyone should be blessed with a sister like that." "She's the only one I have," Clara sighed, her gaze softening as she looked at the innocent child. Andrew understood her silent, unspoken question. Of course, they wouldn't send the little girl away. Lily was family, innocent in this cruel twist of fate. What followed was a long, arduous journey of official paperwork and searching for Daisy, which proved fruitless. The little girl was officially placed in their loving care, just as Clara gave birth to their own precious son. And so Clara found herself a mother of two. At first, Lily didn't speak at all, a quiet child burdened by her past. Clara poured immense love and effort into helping the little girl blossom, to catch up developmentally with her peers. And blossom she did. She soon became a cheerful, chatty whirlwind of joy. Her first word was a clear "Mama," followed by "Dada," and then "Brother." Andrew and Clara's hearts swelled with overflowing happiness. Yes, they were Lily's true parents, in every sense of the word, and their precious daughter would be the very best big sister their son could ever wish for. Since then, Andrew and Clara have built a life filled with laughter, love, and unwavering harmony. They work tirelessly, nurturing their thriving boutique resort and nature preserve, and they are rewarded richly, not just in success, but in the profound satisfaction that comes from creating something beautiful and true. Their shared dream, rooted in this very land, inspires them daily, mending all the old wounds and turning sorrow into strength. But still, a lingering question softly echoes in Clara's heart. What will happen if one day Daisy knocks on their door again?